everybody, this is Diana from So Very Crafty, and we are here today to make this terrific little beginner sewing project that is a reusable fabric gift bag. This is a Christmas version of my fabric gift bag. I've used some nice red and white candy cane stripe fabric and a little snowflake finding to wrap my elastic around. It is a fun and functional little project to make that any beginner sewist can make in no time at all. Once you've put one of these together, it will take you no time to put the rest of them together. And they again are reusable time after time after time. You don't have to worry about all that paper cluttering up your life. You can just use these cute little gift bags. They are indeed a fun little project. I hope you enjoyed this project today, and if you do like my project, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, click that bell for notifications so that you can get notified for all future So Very Crafty videos. And let's get started on how to make this terrific little gift bag for this upcoming holiday season, or any gift that you want to give. It doesn't necessarily have to be the holidays. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started on this terrific little gift bag. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to cut our fabrics, and I've already done that for you. We are going to cut an outer piece of fabric that measures 22 inches long by 9 inches wide. We're also going to cut a lining piece of fabric that measures the same thing, 22 inches long by 9 inches wide, and a piece of Pellon 808 interfacing that measures the same dimensions. We're going to also have a little piece of round elastic that's 4 inches long, or you could use a hair tie for this. It will have the same result. And you're going to want a button, or what they call a finding. And I've used this cute little star finding for my project here today, since this is going to be a Christmas gift bag. The beauty of these gift bags is, of course, you can reuse them over and over and over again. And that's why I like these so much. So for today, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to fuse our interfacing to our, in this instance, I'm going to fuse it to our lining piece so that it doesn't bulk up our outer fabric. Normally I would fuse my interfacing to the outer fabric, but Pellon 808 has a tendency to pucker a little bit, so I'm going to use this on my lining. And all I'm going to do is head over to my hot iron, and I'm going to use a damp cloth to fuse this interfacing to the wrong side of my lining fabric. And as you can see from this particular piece of interfacing, there is a shiny side here and there is a matte side. You're going to want to put the shiny side down onto your fabric and your damp cloth down, and use your hot iron to fuse this interfacing onto the lining so that it becomes one piece of fabric that you can manipulate together. So I'm just going to head over to the iron right now, and I'm going to fuse this interfacing to my lining piece, and we're going to come back over and go to our next step. Now I have my lining backed by my interfacing here, and I'm going to fold this right sides together so that the short ends meet. And I'm going to do that for my outer fabric as well. And I've chosen this nice candy cane stripe here for my bag today. Has a nice Christmassy feel. Now that I have folded these right sides together, I'm going to measure some rectangles on my project here. And I'm just going to place a few pins here to keep this so that it's nice and tight against the top, because this is a little slippery fabric. Same with the interfaced lining. I'm just going to place a couple of pins here. You don't need to if you don't want to. Now I'm going to draw these corners, and I'm going to measure up 1 5/8 inches from the bottom and just make a mark. Right there. And then I'm going to measure over 2 inches and draw a line. And draw a line down. That's 1 5/8 inches. And I'm going to do the same thing for all 4 of these corners, because we're going to end up cutting those out. This one's just a little bit off. There, that's better. We're going to do the same for over here. There we go. Now we have our 4 corners that we have cut out to measure 1 5/8 by 2 inches. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors and we are going to cut these squares out through both layers of our fabric. And then we are going to move on to our next step. There we go. We've now cut our 4 corners. We can now take out these pins. We don't need those anymore. And if we open up our 2 pieces of fabric, we can see that we have 2 identical pieces of fabric that have a large rectangle cut from the sides of our fabric. The next thing that we want to do is we want to add our elastic. And we're just going to find the top center of our outer bag, and I'm just going to do that by folding this in half and finger pressing this so I know where the center is. I'm going to fold my elastic in half so it's a loop, but if you choose to use a hair tie, it's already a loop. And I'm just going to clip this right along here, and I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to tack this on here so it stays on there while I'm doing my next few steps. So let me just head over to the sewing machine and just run a couple of stitches across there, and I'll be right back. Now we have that tacked on, and we are now going to place our lining and our outer bag piece right sides together. And we're going to take a few pins, or you can use wonder clips if you like. And we're just going to pin the top with just a few pins here. If you're a beginner sewist, you may want to use more, but you really don't need too many for this. I'm just going to use these two. And we're going to do the same for the other side. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we are just going to stitch along these two ends using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm not going to show that on the video because we're just doing a straight seam on both ends using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And keep in mind that our fabrics are right sides together. And for those of you that don't know what right sides are, that's the pretty side of the fabric together. So let me run over and stitch these up real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have now stitched these two sides together. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to fold these two sides so that the outer two sides are facing right sides together, and the lining two sides are facing right sides together. And we're going to take some wonder clips, or you could use pins for this if you don't have wonder clips, and we're just going to clip these together. And I'm just going to nest these seams. In other words, I'm going to have one seam going one direction and one seam going the other direction. That way they're nice and neat when I'm stitching them. I could stitch them open, but this is what I prefer. So you can either press these open or you can nest them. Either way is fine. We are going to head over to the sewing machine, and we are going to stitch all along one side of our bag and all along the other side of our bag. However, on one side of our bag, we are going to leave a little bit of an opening because we're going to have to turn this bag right sides out. And the way that we're going to do that is through the opening in the lining. So make sure that you leave a little bit of an opening in the lining so that you can turn your bag right sides out. Again, I'm not going to show the sewing on the video because these are just straight seams up and down the sides, and I'm going to go and head over to the sewing machine and do that, and I'll be right back. So I have completed stitching my sides of my bag, but before we turn this bag right sides out, we are going to box our corners. In other words, we are going to make this bag so it can stand up on its own. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to take our side seam and match it to the bottom. And as you can see, all we're doing is closing up that hole that we had cut out when we cut out our corners. So we're just going to close this hole by taking the bottom and the side and matching those up. And if I didn't mention it before, I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance here for all of my seams, including the boxed corners. So again, I'm taking some Wonder Clips and I am just going to clip this straight line on all 4 of my corners. And that is the corners for the lining and the corners for the outer fabric. Now I'm going to head back to the sewing machine and I'm simply going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way along each of these lines. And again, there's no reason to show this on the video because it's just a straight line across here and on all 4 sides. And once I've done that, I'll come back and we'll finish up this bag. Okay, so we have boxed our corners, and now it's time for us to turn our bag right sides out. So we're going to find our hole in our lining. We're just going to reach in and pull our outer bag through the hole. I probably should have made my hole a little bit bigger, but it'll still work. This Pellon 808 is a little stiff, but I wanted to use the 808 because it's nice and sturdy for this little bag. And you can put some heavier items in here if you want. There we go. So we have successfully turned our bag, even though I made my hole a little smaller than I probably should have. And as you can see, our boxed corners are coming out nicely. can use our hole to manipulate the rest of our fabric. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to close up this hole in the lining. Now you have two choices. You can close this up using ladder stitch or your machine. It doesn't really matter because this is going to be in the lining and no one's going to see it. I'm going to close mine up later using ladder stitch, but you can use your machine if you want. But we're just going to move on to the next step. There are loads of videos online on how to do ladder stitch, and or you can just stitch a straight stitch with your machine. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to stuff our lining into our outer bag. And as you can see, our elastic is sticking out the top. And we have a cute little bag, but we're not finished. Before we finish up our bag here, we are going to take this back over to the sewing machine, and we are just going to run a top stitch all the way around the top. Just a straight stitch around the top, and I'm going to come back and we'll finish this up. Okay, so I finished my top stitch around the top. Now all we need to do is to fold down the top just a little bit. Let's try to match up our lines here. And we are going to stitch on our finding or our button, whichever you want, but I liked this snowflake for this project. Okay, so I have stitched on my little snowflake finding, and my bag is ready to go to put in lots of fun stuff for this Christmas coming up. That's all there is to making this terrific little gift bag, reusable year after year for any Christmas, or use other fabrics for any holiday, or birthday fabrics for any birthday, so that you can use your gift bag over and over again. It is a super simple beginner sewing project that anyone with beginner sewing skills can make in absolutely no time whatsoever. Once you've made one of these, you can put them together in no time. So I hope you enjoyed this project today. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, ding the bell for notifications so that you can get all kinds of notifications for future Sew Very Crafty videos for beginner and intermediate sewists. And enjoy all of the projects that come up during the year. And I hope you head over to www.sewverycrafty.com for all of the sewing and crafting projects that do not show up on the YouTube channel. And believe me, there are loads and loads and loads on the blog that are not on the YouTube channel. So head over there to check those out. And as I said, I hope you enjoyed this project today. And I will see you all next time for the next Sew Very Crafty video. Goodbye, and I hope you have happy holidays this year, and make some of these gift bags because they are fun and functional. See you next time. Bye, everybody.